Hello, and welcome back to the Down to the Wire podcast. We are back again, updating you with the latest and, well, do you know what? I can't actually say that because this is like a pre-season F1 preview, isn't it?
It is still the latest and the greatest news about the F1, but yes, I know what you mean. It's not all sports this week, it is just the F1.
Well, and it's not, we're kind of like looking back a little bit and also forward because it's race week, people.
Man, it's like Back to the Future.
Indeed.
Beautiful.
There we are. What an introduction that is. How are you doing, Jack?
I'm pretty decent. United lost, so I wasn't too happy about that. But at the same time, I wasn't too bothered because it was the FA Cup. My fantasy team was a good week because I had Leandro Trossard as my captain, and he did awesome stuff. So I had a great fantasy week. Wales lost. That was on a disappointing note, but we don't know how it's going to go. I mean, France have got to beat Scotland by 20 points, or more than 20, to win it. So I'm quite confident about that. So, if anything, it should be a bad week, but it hasn't been. So, yeah.
Well, it's not a bad week because we've got Formula 1 coming up.
That is true. I've been watching
I'm excited.
Drive to Survive as well, which I've been enjoying.
I've only watched one episode so far. I'm trying to stagger it a little bit because I don't want to binge it and then be like, oh, what happened?
No, see, I binged it in preparation for the Formula 1. I'm buzzing. All 10 episodes right inside of me.
Fair enough, can't argue with that. So tonight we're basically just going to do an F1 season preview. We're going to take a look at some of the tracks, go through all of the teams, look at their chances, perhaps refer to what's happened in testing. Because I don't think we've actually spoken about testing, have we?
We have not.
On the podcast.
We have not.
We haven't, so we'll kind of intermingle it all together. And we'll just have a good old F1 chinwag.
Sounds good.
Ready for the new season. Right. Are we ready to crack on?
I'm ready to, yeah.
Do you want to kick us off with the first topic of conversation?
Yeah, well, the first thing I thought, let's break down the season. It's got 23 races. It's got some old, some new. I think this is am I right in saying this is the longest Formula 1 season they're ever going to have?
Yeah, well, definitely one of the longest. I mean, I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens with COVID, because I feel like...
But they've cancelled the Chinese one already, haven't they? I don't know if that's been replaced.
Oh, have they?
But the Chinese Grand Prix is cancelled. Maybe for a later date, but...
Well, the thing is, as well, is I feel like... Going slightly off from sports second. When they did the season last year, the whole world was kind of at a fairly similar place in the pandemic. Whereas if you look at where countries are now, as in like the UK seems to be obviously relative to pandemic levels, like the UK seems to be doing okay, whereas like mainland Europe seems to be having another wave. So I guess we'll see what happens in terms of the Formula 1 season.
But I reckon it should all go off without a hitch.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is, at least now, like, it's interesting, because, you said you watched the Drive to Survive, and, it's crazy how quickly it all kind of crept up, isn't it? I don't know if anyone's seen... no, I won't say, just in case people haven't watched it, and they're planning to, and, it's not been out particularly long. But, yeah, it's,
well, we can refer to it.
Surprising... Sorry?
I reckon we can refer to it. It's been a few days.
It's been a few days. All right. Well, if you haven't, perhaps just skip ahead a couple of minutes. But yeah, basically the first episode is kind of pre-season. Mainly for Racing Point, isn't it? Because obviously they were the kind of
big news.
Yes, they were the big. Good way of putting it. They were the big news of the paddock testing.
I tell you what shocked me when I was watching it was that nobody had a mask on, and it was so unusual to see. It was just like.
It was weird, wasn't it? Yeah.
Let's wear a mask at any point. It was, oh man, look at these people wearing masks. They're strange. It's like, oh.
Well, and because I remember when the weekend of the race, there was a whole thing about because Ocon wore a mask, didn't he?
And it was before. That, but
yeah, it was before the general consensus of wearing a mask is the safest option was a thing. And everyone else was there without masks, and then Ocon turned up in a mask, and it was like, oh, Ocon's got a mask on. Whereas now, it would be, if someone didn't have a mask on, you'd be like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's like the whole paddock was like, oh, I've heard there's 2 or 3 people at Racing Point or 2 people at McLaren getting COVID. And not at any moment were they social distancing or wearing masks at that point. They were just like, wow, what a joke this is.
No. Well, I mean, I guess the thing is we've, and I guess this is kind of what I was going on to. I feel like it's got to a point now where, because of the kind of systems are in place and the mentality is in place as well, isn't it? You know, like, if you're in a confined space, you know, wear a mask. Well, even if you're not in a confined space, really wear a mask. If you're around people, where possible, social distance, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully, like you said, you know, the circuits that were cancelled last year have had a chance to kind of prepare themselves. So I guess hopefully we'll see a full, fairly normal calendar, I guess.
Yeah.
Within reason, obviously. Yeah.
In terms of the calendar, any circuits in particular that you're looking for? Or looking forward to?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know, there's just because I'm trying to think, like, what circuits we had last year that, you know,
the only one of
be nice.
The COVIDs, I think, to survive into this year is the Emilia-Romagna. Oh, both of them then. The second Italian one, though, wasn't it? Oh, is that the same one?
What, Mugello?
No, Emilia-Romagna. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called.
Imola.
Is that what it was? Oh, okay, see, there's so many
I don't know which one you're referring to.
I'll find it.
Well, there were 3... They were... Did they even go to... They didn't go to Monza last year, did they?
They went to Monza because
remember.
Pierre Gasly won there.
Yes, they did. How could I forget that? Yes, they went to Monza, they went to Mugello, and they did Imola. They would have been the 3...
Oh, Imola, yeah, that was the one which they're bringing back this year.
Right, okay. And they bring in Portimao back on, and they bring in the Portuguese Grand Prix.
Back
but
to back.
I don't know, like, in a weird way, like, I really enjoyed the kind of mixed calendar last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice to see
no one was
some
ready.
Different tracks on.
You had to adapt.
No, and it was nice to see some return. You know, like Turkey, Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Both of those I really enjoyed.
Honestly, I'm still convinced that the Eiffel Grand Prix should be on the calendar.
Yeah,
it was.
I'm gutted that that's not back. But, you know, I think it was nice to have those differences, but at the same time, like, you know, we had 2 at the Austria, we had 2 in Silverstone, we had 2 at Bahrain. Okay, slightly different circuit shapes, but still in Bahrain. So it'll be nice to kind of get back to a little bit of normality as well, with some additions as well, I guess. I'm kind of skirting around the question here, Jack, aren't I? Look, Spa. You know, we didn't have Spa. Did we have Spa? We did have Spa. Gosh, I can't even remember now. But yeah, it's always good to have Spa.
Yeah, longest circuit on the calendar, I believe.
Yeah, absolute classic.
Did enjoy it.
I really hope we go back to Melbourne.
Yeah, is that on the cards for this year?
I think it is, but I think they've put it towards the end.
That's smart.
I think because they've decided that Bahrain is going to be the start rather than Melbourne. I'm just trying to think what other ones we missed. Monaco. We didn't have Monaco last year, did we?
That's the first time in a very long time that we haven't had Monaco.
Yeah. Be good to get back to Monaco. Although it'll be weird. Yes, that was a huge miss. But sorry, just going back to Monaco briefly. It'll be weird to see Monaco without the kind of hustle and bustle vibe. Yeah. Because obviously that's not really going to be allowed. So I wonder perhaps if that's going to detract. Because, you know, like, as good a circuit as Monaco, well, maybe it isn't, depending on your opinion, but as in Monaco, it's all about the theatre, isn't it? And it's the atmosphere and the...
It's all about qualifying.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, in terms of the race, it's not always the most entertaining, is it? But, you know, if you kind of take away the kind of fans and the noise and the spectacle of it all, if you want a better phrase, how is that going to fare, I guess? So it'll be interesting to see that. And yeah, cracking shout. Brazil, I'm a huge fan of, of that circuit. So yeah, it would be nice to have it back, I guess.
In terms of new circuits, we got Zandvoort this year and Jeddah. Zandvoort was meant to be on the calendar last year, but was one of the cancelled ones for COVID. Are you looking forward to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen bits of Zandvoort, and through my vast experience of playing it on Formula 1 2020, I think it's got the potential to be an exciting circuit, but I don't know, I feel like overtaking is going to be quite difficult.
I did think that. There's some really technical sections, and it's really punishing in the sense that it's almost completely gravel, like off the track.
I'll be honest with you, I feel like it's going to be quite similar to Mugello in that qualifying will look very, very impressive there. I know the race at Mugello was carnage, but that was because people just couldn't stop smashing into each other, rather than the actual race in itself being... and you know, like in Mugello, you had that crazy slipstream, didn't you? Down the home straight,
which is
where
why
that was like
basically slowed down and didn't even do the restarts like at a normal area. It was like we're going to go up to the line.
And that kind of that was like the only overtaking point really. Was that long straight. Will's and won't be the same. You know, he's got a huge straight at the end, isn't it, coming off the bank turn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like as a purist of somebody who enjoys the kind of technicalities of Formula One, I'm sure it'll be fantastic for overtaking and entertainment.
Possibly not.
Could raise a few questions, but you know, it's Formula One. We'll see what happens.
Now, since we last spoke about the Jeddah Grand Prix circuit, they've actually released the correct new circuit. Which is
so it's not that ridiculous one, which is like a million.
No, it is. It is still the longest street circuit on the calendar.
I'm going to get it up as we talk about it.
Yeah, okay. It is still the longest street circuit on the calendar, and it is new this year. It wasn't meant to be on last year, but it looks remarkably similar in terms of, you just look at it as a bird's eye view, as Azerbaijan. Almost a hybrid between Azerbaijan and what would have been Vietnam last year, in the sense that it's predominantly really long straights. But yeah, it does look like a semi-decent circuit, I think.
I mean, the thing is, it is a long circuit, but because it's so straight, you know, that's not going to make that much difference. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I prefer that to the monstrosity that was suggested previously. You know, you got a few high speed turns, you got some tighter corners, some sweeping kind of turns. You know, it'd be interesting to see how it goes. To be honest,
absolutely,
really interesting. The thing is, it's always a bit of an unknown, because until you actually see Formula, as in, and I guess that's what makes Formula One unique, as in, you only know how good a Formula One track is when a Formula One car is actually driven on it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Until that point, it's.
And we don't know how wide the circuit will be.
Exactly.
There's so many parameters that you don't get until.
And you don't know whether are they going to be like. Is it, you know, because it's a street circuit, isn't it? Is it just going to be like concrete walls? Because if that's the case, that could be quite exhilarating. Seeing how, you know.
Well, yeah, that's what makes Azerbaijan particularly fun. Is that at the end of what I'd probably say is probably the longest straight in the calendar. That just Azerbaijan one, that is just enormous. But right at the end of it is that almost, not hairpin, but 90-degree turn instantly. And that is, I mean, you can go on YouTube and you see how does the driving lines on Formula One work, and you know who has to give permission. It's like that turn is epic for that sort of stuff, because it's like, where's the braking point? You can't be one of those where it's like, I'll gamble and brake late just to make sure that I beat the person who's taking the correct line, because if you get that wrong, you're in the wall. And that's as much as it's like, dangerous having concrete walls so close to the track, but at the same time it's like, it's punishing. There's no there's no give. If you get it wrong, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, and it affects how the driver's mentality works as well, doesn't it? There are tracks where there are large run-offs, where drivers, you know, perhaps push it beyond the limits and get away with it. You know, if they do that in a street circuit with concrete barriers, they're going to get punished, aren't they?
Yeah. Like they get warnings for some circuits when you go over the line. If there's no warning when you hit a concrete wall, you're losing a wheel. It's like, that's the reality of the situation. So it could be a really good addition. To be honest, I do like the street circuits. Apart from Monaco, I'm not a big Monaco fan, but I am a fan of Azerbaijan. I hope to be a fan of Jeddah, and I believe there's another street circuit. Singapore, and I do like Singapore. That is the case.
I mean, I'm looking forward to Portimao coming back, because I thought that was cracking last year.
All right.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Portimao.
Good.
I mean, I also have a soft spot for Imola, but I feel like these cars are just too big for it. They're just too wide. So I guess we'll see how it goes. And, you know, like there's oh man, I'm really looking forward to it. As in, it'll be good to have. It's like this year you've got, like last year was like completely different, and then this year you've got like little bits of new. some of the ones from last year returning, some of the general, just, they're always there kind of races. And it'll be good to see how they all go, I guess.
Should be good.
Should be good. Right, should we move on to each of the teams then? Do a bit of a dissection of how they're looking post pre-season, pre-normal season.
That does sound like a good idea. Let's do that.
That sounded really professional, didn't it? The way I said that. There we go. Right. Right. We'll start off with the reigning constructors champions, Mercedes.
Yep.
8 on the bounce, which is, I believe, is the record. No one has matched that. As in look completely unstoppable last year. I'm just trying to think, actually, like the majority of races, apart from
the last one, that's for sure.
The second Bahrain race where they decided to put the wrong tyres on the wrong cars. I feel like there was another one as well.
Abu Dhabi, they didn't win. Verstappen just beat them outright on that. You were saying about the Sakhir Grand Prix, because that's the one Perez won. And there was Monza,
and they also,
where Pierre Gasly won. What were you saying about
And Austria? They also had the thing in Russia, didn't they, where Hamilton did he stopped in the wrong place to do a race start or practice race start, and he got pinged for it.
But didn't Bottas win that one anyway?
Yeah, well, this is what I mean. Is in like it was very much a case of last year, apart from like those really random ones where like if Hamilton didn't win, Bottas won.
Yeah,
and vice versa. They just look completely formidable, didn't they? As in, after like 4 or 5 races, you were like the only thing that can seem to stop Mercedes right now is that their car produces too much downforce, which is causing them to shred their tyres. And you're like, when you get into that point, you know you're doing well.
Although that shouldn't be as much an issue this year, because I don't know if you're aware, but the floor of the car is narrower. So whereas before the floor of the car was quite wide towards the rear wheels, the new regulations mean that it's almost, they've trimmed quite a lot of it off, so it means there's a lot less grip at the rear end.
It's interesting as well, because the majority, I think it's pretty much all of the grid, have seemed to gone for the Red Bull rake, in terms of how the car sits to the ground. They've kind of got the floor of the car is much closer to the ground at the front than it is at the rear. That's what the majority seem to have gone with, but Mercedes have again stuck to their guns with the flat consideration rather than having a rake. They've just gone as close to the ground as they can, front to back. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously there's no DAS this year.
There's not, and I'll be honest, I think that is going to be quite a difference maker, because I don't think Mercedes, like in a sense, what they set as a benchmark from last year, I think they'll struggle to get on that this year, because it was so much better with the DAS. And like in a sense, I'm not saying they're going to make a step back massively, but as all the other cars improve, let's say the only thing that was separating Red Bull and Mercedes last year, or a big part of that, was the DAS, I think it could be a lot closer this year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit, excuse me, but Mercedes didn't have a particularly good pre-season, did they? I
think they had one of the least number of laps in testing this year.
They did. But this has happened before. We don't really know with Mercedes anymore. They kind of, you look at them and you go, oh, they're struggling in pre-season, and then the first qualifying they get 1-2 by a distance.
But to be fair, I do.
That's not to say they will this time.
I do think in the past that they were just hiding what they were doing. But I mean, I think this is the least number of laps they've completed in testing since like 2013 or something like that. It's been a long time since they'd not done this.
What you've got to remember is that Mercedes is so far ahead before they, as in, I know there are changes, but as in fundamentally the changes to the cars, it's not like a full on regulation change. So they are so far ahead. It's up to the rest of the teams to catch up, really. I agree with you on the DAS. I don't think Mercedes are going to be as fast this year as they were last year, just purely on the fact that the DAS is no longer a thing.
And to be fair, Mercedes are getting about 20 seconds on anybody else.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? As in, okay, they may not be as fast, but that still probably puts them stop
Yeah.
because they were so much quicker than everyone else.
Just
You
by
know,
10
it'll be
seconds
interesting.
instead.
Yeah, exactly. Just the proverbial mile than the literal mile. Yeah, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Mercedes going into the season. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, joint with Michael Schumacher. You know, he's going for the 8th.
That would put him number one of all time then, wouldn't it?
That would put him number one of all time. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm of the opinion that as soon as Hamilton gets the 8th, he's going to retire.
Yeah. That's if he gets the 8th.
That of course it's an if, but as in,
bigger.
I think he's probably most likely right now, between the car he's driving and the individual, I think he's probably most likely, in all honesty.
Do you reckon?
I think so.
See, I mean, I don't know, I'll spoil it for after when we talk about Red Bull, but I don't think he's going to win it this year.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see for that then. But yeah, and you know, like we said, questions could be raised about the car. Are Mercedes hiding their pace? Are Mercedes genuinely struggling? We don't really know. I mean, we can look to past pre-seasons where Mercedes have been on the ropes or really struggled, and then they've just gone on to dominate the first race. This could be the time where they don't do it. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Hamilton going into the season?
I mean, I think he's going to win quite a few races. That's a foregone.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting. It'd be good to see him tested more this year, because
it would be, and
as much as Bottas is supposed to have tested him, and he did in maybe 3 or 4 of the races, he got genuinely close. I mean, apart from the ones where either Hamilton didn't retire all season, which is pretty remarkable. But apart from Bottas, you know, in the races where Hamilton had a genuine failure in the race, like there was something to do with like the Russia pit stop or not pit stop start, or some tyres bursting here or there. The ones where Bottas won, he just won in a sense. He didn't dominate Hamilton or anything. It was down to some sort of mistake or strategy by the team. Usually, it was never really down to Hamilton. So it'd be good if Bottas could decrease the gap between them at the very least and just battle with Hamilton. I mean, this season.
It's tricky for Mercedes as a team because, I mean, obviously what they want is what's been happening, and that's one driver to get number 1, the other to get number 2. As in, realistically, they're not that bothered as long as that happens, you know? I think Bottas has been a good wingman to his detriment at times. He could... I don't know, I just feel like he lacks that cutting edge sometimes, Bottas. What you could really do with him doing is... It's almost like, I feel like if he did it once over Hamilton, I think that could break the camel's back kind of thing. And then I think he'd think, oh, do you know what? I can do this kind of thing. But at the moment, it's almost like he hasn't got that... I don't know how to describe it really, that kind of cutting edge.
I think.
Killer instinct. Oh, you've put that in notes, haven't you? Killer instinct. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
But yeah, he's never ruthless enough to take advantage of an opportunity or to say no about something. I mean, to be fair, I think he does on occasion say no now, or he will try and sort of forge his own path to winning a race. But by and large, he's very much a passenger to the Mercedes engine in a sense. He's like he's a good driver, and he's not bad. He's not like the Albon to Verstappen in a sense, where there's not a chance Albon's ever going to be better.
Jack, what are we going to talk about this season now that Albon's gone?
I know. Albon is kind of the whole story, because the whole thing was, how is he getting away with being in the second best car despite being not even the top 10 driver? But it's like this year, it's like you just, with Bottas in particular, it's like he's good enough to challenge in a way, or to keep Hamilton on his toes, which is good for Mercedes, because someone like Hamilton in a luxurious position he's in, where he's got the best car and he's probably number 1 or number 2 best driver on the grid. It could be easy just to go complacent and go, well, I'll just do what I want.
Well, I mean, I guess the way I'd see it is this: if Mercedes hadn't have won the constructors last year, I think you'd be looking at a different number 2 driver in the Merc.
100%.
And I think it's going to have to get to that point for Mercedes to not be with Bottas, to be honest.
Do you think there is nailed on this year? Now, the reason I say this is because, as I mentioned before, Hamilton didn't retire in a single race last year. That is crazy efficiency. Like, the fact that car didn't break down once for him is incredible. But also, Red Bull have a genuine second driver, or hope to have a genuine second driver in Perez, who's got a little bit more experience. Well, he's got a lot more experience. He's probably got 10 years on some of the other guys who've been with Verstappen. So,
yeah.
I mean, Red Bull could genuinely catch up a little bit. And, I mean, just on the balance of probability, Mercedes at some point have to have some more failures.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it'll definitely be closer, because, like when you've got drivers pit in for fastest lap, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, because, and that was the problem that Red Bull had for the majority of the last year, was that, Verstappen, not necessarily the fastest, but he was there or thereabouts, and it was literally a case of, like, Red Bull would be like, right, how are we going to work this? And then they think, right, we'll do this, and then Mercedes go, okay, we'll just use Bottas to cover you off there.
Yeah.
And that was it. Whereas now, like, having Perez there, again, you're not saying that Perez is going to be... He may well be, but you don't need Perez to be like right up there with Hamilton. But if he's just within a pit stop, that gives you that kind of leeway to...
Yeah.
Or gives Red Bull the leeway, and it prevents Mercedes from having that easy time. Yeah, exactly.
You can't gamble with one because they can cover you with one. When you've got 2 on 2, it's like, well, are they going to gamble on that one if it then means they're opening the door for the other one to go and win?
Absolutely.
The race?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think there's no doubt that it's going to be closer this year. As in, the battle between Mercedes and Red Bull. I just don't know about Bottas, to be honest. I mean, I don't think he can, because this is the thing. I think Nico Rosberg and Bottas are probably equally talented as drivers, but Rosberg seemed to have that kind of will
savvy.
to win.
Yeah,
and he was smart. Whereas Bottas seems to be not stupid, but he's passive. As in, there'll be times where you're like, oh no, you need to go for that. As in, I mean, there've been a few times. There were a few times last season where, like Hamilton would have like a slightly dodgy pit stop or something wouldn't go quite right, and you would think, right, this is Bottas's chance. Like he's on the freshest high, or whatever, and then his times would slowly come down, and then they would just plateau. And he wouldn't get any faster, and you're like, oh no, come on, you need to push Hamilton.
Like sometimes
this is
he'd
your
be
chance.
on the softer tyre, so it should go quicker. And it's like, your times are actually... How are you if you're going slower on a better tyre? It's like,
and it wouldn't necessarily be...
Sometimes.
It wouldn't be that he'd be dropping back to Hamilton, but the gap would be staying the same. And this is the kind of, this is the question that I always think. I always think, is it a case that Bottas isn't taking advantage, or is it just a case that Hamilton is that good? And the more the time goes on, at the end of the day, right, Bottas and Hamilton are in the same car. So, within reason, I know there'll be differences to how the cars are set up for each driver and etc. But generally, they're in the same car. So, the only difference is the driver. So, I think it's equally as much Bottas not being kind of cutthroat as it is Hamilton being very good. That's what I think, personally.
Yeah. I agree with that, yeah. I mean, I was watching a clip of Rosberg and Hamilton's battles, and there was one where they were in, I think it was in Monaco, and obviously for qualifying, you can do your fastest lap on any lap, it doesn't matter when you're doing it. And Rosberg had just set the fastest lap. Hamilton was on a flying lap after him, and he, rather by chance, looked like he was going for a turn. He went, I got to pull out. So he goes off into the slip.
Then it's yellow flag.
Yellow flag, so it means Hamilton can't go through that sector as fast as he wants to. He has to go to a max speed limit, and then it just ruins Hamilton's lap. And it's like, those are the sort of really cynical things you got to do if you want a chance of beating Lewis Hamilton. And not once has Bottas gone, I'm going to be cynical. I mean, maybe when he gave Verstappen the toe in Russia, where after he'd done his qualifying, he was like, I want to be either first or third. And I'm going to give Verstappen a toe just so he'll potentially beat Hamilton and get first, and that'll push Bottas into third, or he goes second and then Bottas moves to third anyway. But there's some of those killer moments where he's got to go, I'm going to really be selfish. Don't care about Hamilton.
Yeah.
Because to be fair, when you're in that Mercedes team, you know they're going to win the constructors. I mean, it's pretty much beyond anybody else's abilities to beat Mercedes for the constructors. So it's like there's no real reason to play team orders. It's just go at it because.
Yeah, this is the thing. Is in Mercedes have never done the kind of full on team orders stuff, have they? And I think, from what I understand, they seem to go down the route of, if you qualify on pole, you get choice of pit strategy.
Yeah. I think it's drivers ahead, isn't it?
Maybe, I don't even know.
Yeah.
It might well be.
It very much isn't predetermined, though. As in, Hamilton's better
it's not
than
Hamilton.
Bottas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we are then. We'll move on from Merc, go on to the competitor, Red Bull.
Well, it's competitor singular because I can't see anybody else competing with them.
Well, I mean, I may have to disagree with you on that one, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Great.
Do you want to kick us off with Red Bull?
Yeah, finished second last year to Mercedes, but they were fastest in testing, which I do genuinely think they could be pretty good. I mean, a lot of what was wrong with the Red Bull car last year was that they couldn't control it. They said it had no grip on the rear end, and all the reports coming out of testing were the Red Bull has sorted out that issue. And if they have, I mean, who knows how good they could be. But, yeah, I mean, I kind of just put the question quite early on. I didn't have much to say about Red Bull. I mean, they are the last team to beat Mercedes, which is something to hold. But that was over 8 years ago. Well, it was 8 years ago. So it doesn't really count.
How old were you when that happened, Jack?
8 years, 15. So yeah, that was a long time.
Yeah,
ago. First year GCSEs.
It's a long time. I'd say I was doing GCSEs.
Yeah, first year as well.
Very good.
But yeah, do you think this is Red Bull's year to reclaim the title?
Not really. I don't think so. And I don't know. It's a tricky one because we don't really know how Mercedes are doing.
It'll all come down to that first practice session.
I'll be honest with you. I think the problem that Red Bull have got is that they have the not greatest engine. You know.
Yeah, they did have a few retirements. Notably, in the first race of last year, Verstappen retired.
Yeah,
and it was like, that is such a downer to start the season on. It's like he's in second, cruising, and then that happens.
When you say win, do you mean as in the constructors, or do you mean driver championship?
I mean constructors.
Well, I mean, I guess a lot of it kind of relies on how good Perez actually is, isn't it? This is his, this is his time to shine. This is the best. He's been with McLaren before, but as in they weren't exactly vintage when he was with them. This is the best car he's ever been in, with one of it's the best team he's been with. Is he going to be able to step up? I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think how Red Bull finish in the constructors will be very heavily dependent on how Perez does, because as in Verstappen is excellent, isn't he? I think.
I'll be honest, I think he's the best driver on the grid. I genuinely think that. I just think the way he pretty much dominates all of his second drivers is insane. Like, Hamilton beats Bottas all the time, but it's never as enormous a gap. I mean, how much of that is down to the fact that Albon is very good? I don't know. But, I mean...
Well... I mean, there are a couple of things I would say to that. I think Verstappen is very, very good. I think he still lacks a little bit of experience. Like, for example, Turkey last year, as in, he's following Perez, bearing in mind it's wet, and he tries to pull an overtake, and you're kind of there like, Lewis Hamilton doesn't try that, because it's never going to end well.
But also, Hamilton's never in a situation to try that, because he's always at the front. But
that's because he's the fastest.
Nah, he's there because it's the Mercedes.
No.
I reckon if Verstappen was in that Mercedes, he'd be miles in the distance.
If it were all about the Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton would win the same number of races, and that doesn't happen.
No, because I don't think Bottas is very good. And
well, what about Nico Rosberg then?
Yeah, and Hamilton was challenged and he lost.
Sorry?
He lost, didn't he, to Nico? Nico retired on top.
Once out of 4.
And the last time Hamilton and
That's
Rosberg were against each other, he lost.
Yes, but that's because Rosberg then retired, the absolute pansy. No, as in, I still think Verstappen is very good. And I kind of get what you're saying about beating his teammate, but Christian Horner flipping the doors Max Verstappen to the point where Verstappen almost has a car made for him, which is not a bad thing, but as in, I don't think you can then say Verstappen beats his competitors. It's like, well, he's obviously going to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and when you think about it, who has Verstappen had as his teammate? He's had Daniel Ricciardo, who was effectively ousted because Christian Horner was like, Max Verstappen's my son. You had Pierre Gasly, who wasn't really given a fair crack of the whip, I would say.
100%, yeah. Season's nowhere near enough time.
No, and then you've got Alex Albon, who, again, hasn't performed particularly well.
Understatement.
yeah. But and I don't think that takes away from Verstappen. I still think he's excellent. I think he will. He's going to be a world champion at some point. But I think right now the difference is the Red Bull doesn't seem to be quite as capable as the Mercedes is. Who knows? With another teammate there who can actually drive a car quickly, perhaps it puts a little less pressure on Verstappen to be like, oh, we just need to get the points. Mm-hmm. If he's got somebody behind him who can actually do a job, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But
and if anything, on occasion he might be able to take the gamble. He could be the one trying to do the undertake. He could be the one going in early, and it's like, well, at least the team's got Perez to gather the points.
I mean, look, Red Bull are an excellent team. In terms of finances, they can't match Mercedes just because they're not a manufacturer team. So Red Bull have to do things that kind of are tactically smart. Last season, they weren't given the choice of that because their second driver was fairly inept to the point where he wasn't even like a chess piece. They couldn't, as in terms of races, it was like, well, Albon's back in 11th. There's nothing that we can do with Albon to help Max at the front.
Oh, yeah. He was really poor last year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at his results now. I mean, he finished in the top 3 once. And it's like...
How many times did Verstappen finish there?
Well, it's better to say how many times he didn't. 3 times.
Yeah, there you go. It's crazy, isn't it?
That is just nuts how big a gulf there is between them. I mean, to be honest, you put the combined points of Red Bull and McLaren and you don't get Mercedes points. And I think that is in part because Albon wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
But also I think that Mercedes car is just that much better. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that the Mercedes car is the best on the grid. Mm-hmm. I couldn't argue that. I don't think anyone could argue that, really.
No. Until this year. I'll be honest, I'm going all in on Red Bull. I think Verstappen's going to win it all. I think this is the year, Jack. This is the year.
I mean, I would say that, but I feel like that's what the majority of people who don't like Mercedes
I didn't say I don't like them.
No, not you. I mean, sorry. What other people say who don't like Mercedes, that's what they say every season. So we'll see how that goes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think Perez is the key here. And if Perez can if Perez is a good performer, I think that blasts it wide open.
Absolutely. I mean,
particularly because, like you said, Mercedes having a good pre-season. Sorry, go on.
Even if Perez just finishes 4th in every race,
he just has to keep the pressure on.
It's at the fact that actually, if you even go just to top 4 for Ocon last year, he finished in the top 4 3 times. It's like
Albon, you mean?
Albon, yeah. Keep saying Ocon.
What have you got against Ocon, mate?
I don't think he's very good. That's as blunt as I'm going to be. But you know what I mean? Just be the 4th best driver more than half the time, and you're sitting pretty at Red Bull because they haven't had the 4th best driver, or they haven't had somebody who's able to get the 2nd best car into the 4th best driver position. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully they can do it more. I mean, you even look at how many times Albon retired. He retired 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times last year. I mean, the fact that Hamilton didn't retire once. Bottas retired just the once.
The only time Hamilton didn't race is when he was struck down by COVID.
Yeah. It's like, gosh, kick a man when he's down in that situation.
Yeah.
Well, even Max Verstappen, well, I'm sure he did. I don't know why. No, apologies. Ignore everything I've just said. The way they've worked this out, they've gone for the highest position for the top row and the lower for the second. That doesn't make any sense. They have retired. I've just been messing around with incorrect numbers there.
Oh, Jack.
I know.
This is meant to be a professional podcast.
I know,
You're feeding us lies.
I'm on Wikipedia here. It should be the truth.
Oh, gosh.
No, the way it works, in Red Bull Racing Honda, the top row is all like, good results. And the bottom row for each team is whatever the worst result of the two was. So obviously on the top row, there's no retirements. But no, some of them might have been Ocon. Never mind.
Yeah.
Ignore all that then. But yeah, either way, Albon.
You've done it again.
They got similar names. It's on. Super professional.
Just another side note is there the potential that Perez could come in and unsettle the boat for Verstappen? Who knows? As in, let's put it this way:
I think he's too old.
But if Perez comes in and for the first 2 or 3 races outperforms Verstappen, unlikely, I'll admit. Mm-hmm. But as in, if that happens, what do Red Bull do then? Because Red Bull have a habit of favouring certain drivers. Do they back Perez, the new man, or do they stick with their golden boy?
I'll be honest, I think in that situation they do very much what Mercedes do and go, great, we have the first and the second best driver.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I can't see that happening, truthfully. But
oh no, I can't see it happening. No, I'm just putting hypotheticals out there.
If it did, I mean, great for them, because that would genuinely... I mean, if he's better than Verstappen, and we're both agreed that Verstappen's better than Bottas, well, they've got at least second and third every single race. So,
no, you're not wrong.
They can't argue with that, can they?
Nope, absolutely not. Right, should we move on to the next batch of teams?
Yeah, I've sort of described these as the chasing pack, because I wouldn't call them the mid-table, but they are only... Well, some of them are only a touch off of those top 2 places. And I believe you think one of them is genuinely in there.
I do.
Which one?
And that team is McLaren.
Really?
I think McLaren are dark horses this year, I've got to be honest. I really do. As in...
I can see why. That Mercedes engine...
I'm not some sort of... Exactly, I'm not some sort of Mystic Meg, as in I think, as in like the bottom line is they've got the best engine on the grid. They've got 2 very good drivers. I liked Carlos Sainz. I think he's a solid driver, but I think Daniel Ricciardo's a step up. And I think it's very much... I was about to say Renault. Alpine's loss is McLaren's gain.
Yeah.
I think that Ricciardo's got a lot to prove now, as in this is his second team post Red Bull. The purpose of him moving from Red Bull was so he could go to a team and be competitive. That didn't really work out at Renault. He's now in probably the best car he's going to get outside of Red Bull and Mercedes. Well, right now is in Ferrari side, because Ferrari are in a bit of a rough patch at the moment, aren't they? Looking better than they did last season, but as in they're not vintage Ferrari. As in it's probably the best car he could be in, apart from the Merc, the Red Bull, or the Ferrari then, if you want to include Ferrari right now.
To be honest, I do generally think Ferrari are going to be vastly better than they were last year, but sticking with McLaren.
But just a side note, is that hard, being better than they were last year?
No. But when I say that, I think they'll be at least the 4th best team. But yeah, carry on with your McLaren speech.
Yes, I'll carry on with my McLaren. What's the word? I can't think of the word. Anyway, rhetoric. Yeah, I think McLaren are looking really good, and I feel like McLaren have been, for 3 or 4 years now, McLaren have gradually been building, and I feel like the Merc engine is that final piece of the puzzle, and they can really kind of kick on and be what everyone wants McLaren to be, and that's a competitive team, I think.
Yeah. All anybody wants is to have 10 teams all competing for first.
Yeah.
And obviously we can't have that, but the more teams...
No.
Which is why I'm really hopeful Ferrari refined their form of 2 years ago, where they were competing. There was aspect of the car which was better than Mercedes. But if we could see the McLaren up there with the Red Bull, with potentially a Ferrari and the Mercedes, I mean, it could be epic, some of these races.
Yeah, I mean, and like, you always want, McLaren are historically one of the more successful teams in Formula 1. You always want that up there. You never want to lose. And like the same with Ferrari, you never want...
It's not nice
those
seeing them
good
down in the doldrums.
No, and it just makes the monopoly at the top, bigger, doesn't it, really? Isn't it? It just increases the power of the top teams, which, for them is excellent. But for the entertainment and the competition, it doesn't. So yeah, I'm back in McLaren this year. Not necessarily to go and win the championship, but I think they can really mix it up with...
Red Bull.
Well, listen, let's put it this way. If you're saying that Mercedes is one of the better cars, based on the fact that they've got the best engine, and last year their car was excellent, you've got generally Red Bull have the best chassis, perhaps lacking in the power department because they use the Honda engine. You've then got McLaren, who last year did pretty well with the Renault engine, had a good aero package. If you then put the Merc engine in that car, I think that kind of puts them in the mix. Maybe not with Red Bull, but as in fairly close, I would say, to the point where, I wouldn't half be surprised if, you maybe had like a Merc 1-2 followed by a Red Bull, followed by a McLaren, followed by a Red Bull. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's very possible. I think McLaren, I think McLaren could kind of be in that kind of 3rd or 4th bracket as opposed to sort of 5th to 10th bracket, if that makes sense.
Well, Ricciardo finished in the top 5 7 times last year.
Which, considering the Renault wasn't exactly vintage,
well,
it's not bad,
his
is it?
teammate Esteban Ocon finished in the top 5 twice. And one of them was because of the Sakhir Grand Prix where it all went
Danny
crazy.
Rick is different level. He is really good.
That boy is different mustard, as Eddie Hearn would say.
Boy, that guy is different mustard.
You are different mustard, my darling. Different mustard. But yeah. To be fair, you put him in that car. I mean, you think about the McLaren was... to be honest, I'd say the McLaren was a gulf better than the Renault last year. And
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He got more points than both Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, despite being in a worse car. It's like, this is only going to go up. So, this could be a really tasty season for him.
It could be. Well, and just McLaren in general, I don't think you can rule out Lando, can you? He's still very young.
Well, what surprised me about Lando Norris, he finished 9th last year in terms of individual driver standings. And that's bottom of that sort of pack of good drivers, in a sense. Which is disappointing for him, but...
It is. I feel like he had quite a good start, didn't he, Lando Norris?
Yeah, 3rd, 5th, 13th, 5th. You know what I mean? That's 3 top 5s in his first 4 races. That's what you want. But I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, I guess it is worth noting that, McLaren did kind of have like a little bit of a mid-season lull. And then they kind of did a bit of development, and they kind of kicked on again a little bit. But, we'll wait and see. I guess the way I see it is that McLaren are dark horses. Definitely do not want to write them off.
Yeah, definitely, as you say, could be potentially second team this year.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We will wait and see.
Absolutely.
Right, Aston Martin.
The newly minted Racing Point. Should be interesting, because Racing Point last year, keep going back to my things, were the 4th best team. They only lost out by 7 points to McLaren, and they had a retirement on that last race of the season. So who knows, they could have been the 3rd had things not gone the way they did. They are without Sergio Perez, who was the 4th best driver according to points last year. So, I mean, perhaps Sergio
By
Perez is
how many points was that, out of interest?
to which what Sergio Perez to where now?
Fifth.
Sergio Perez was 6 points ahead of Danny Rick, who was in turn 14 ahead of Carlos Sainz. So he was, he's in the considerable. It almost goes Hamilton, then Bottas and Verstappen in the same pretty much spot, then Perez and Ricciardo in the same spot.
I mean,
and then everybody else.
I'm not taking it away from Sergio Perez, but let's not forget he got that one win at Sakir, which on an individual level was absolutely outstanding. Like, he came from the back of the grid, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But Mercedes did decide to put the wrong tyres on the wrong car.
That's true.
When they were a very long time ahead.
Although, on the flip side, in the Bahrain, the weekend before that, was
the Bahrain Grand Prix.
The Bahrain, rather than the Sakir.
Oh yes,
he was at the top, and on the last lap or something,
his engine
just exploded. So who knows what?
Yeah, no, you are right. I stand corrected.
He could have had even
balances
more.
Out.
Yeah. That balancing out. I did look around because, like, with Lando being in ninth, as I said a minute ago, it's like, but Charles Leclerc got a second and a third in that season, which is crazy to think. So they weren't exactly ones which were normal. So some of those guys are in awkward situations. But yeah, Sergio Perez, and you got to remember, Sergio Perez had COVID for 2 weeks.
That's true, actually. That's a very good point.
Yeah. So Sergio Perez can only go up. He's in a better car. He's going to basically finish 4 more races. Who knows?
Oh, no more Hulkenbach.
No, it's
disappointing.
I
guess the big thing for Aston Martin, though, is the Sergio Perez replacement.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's an upgrade? Because we've got 4-time world champion, 3,000 accumulated points, 53 race wins, Sebastian Vettel.
Mm-hmm. In case you hadn't guessed.
In case you haven't
read the news.
Yeah. What do you think is going to go on there, then?
I mean, on paper, it's hands down an upgrade, isn't it? As in, you're going from a man who only won his first race last year to a 4-time world champion. I'm a little bit jury's out with Vettel at the moment. I think it's difficult because I feel like last year was a combination of Ferrari gave up on him a little bit. Well, I say a little bit, a lot. But also, I feel like he wasn't exactly at his best either. But then, was that because Ferrari had basically thrown in the towel with him? So it's a bit of a vicious circle. I don't know which way around it goes. I think it's worth saying that even before last season, the season before, Vettel wasn't particularly at his best. It may be that it was a kind of like a boiling point effect, as in it was a gradual kind of frustration, and that perhaps because the car was so bad last year, it all kind of, sparked, and that's how it ended with Ferrari and Vettel. The bottom line is this, and this is the same thing I'd say when people say, oh, Vettel only won because of his car. Like, you don't win 4 world championships based on your car alone. No. It can be a big factor, but as in, that's 4 years where you've got somebody else in the exact same car as you, and you have outperformed them 4 years. Well, for Vettel, it was 4 years in a row. So you don't become a bad.
He beat Alonso, not when Alonso never his teammate, but the one where he got the world championship off of Alonso. With I think in the last 4 races, he just blitzed him on all 4, and it was. I think that was his first race. That was his first race, and his first season
title. And I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying he didn't lead the championship until the final day where he won it.
So that's a winner.
But is it that kind of like, is he on the downward curve? As in, he's been in Formula 1 a long time. Is it a case that he just needed a new challenge? I mean, Ferrari isn't exactly the, when you look at some of the drivers who've been there and failed, like Fernando Alonso never won a title with Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel, a 4-time world champion, never won a title with Ferrari. There's a bit of a correlation, and it's not the driver, it's the team. So, I don't think you can put Vettel's perhaps struggling form purely down to Vettel. But it's a difficult one because Aston Martin didn't particularly have a great pre-season either, did they? I think I'm right in saying.
They did have some issues, that is correct, yes.
Yeah, as in, I think, from what I read, as in Merc by far had the worst testing, and then probably followed by Aston Martin. Perhaps they copied their car again, which is why they're struggling so much.
That could well be it. So,
that's a shot fired right there. No, I it'll be nice to see Vettel in a place where he clearly feels wanted. And I would imagine that will probably lead to an upturn in results, not necessarily podiums, because at the end of the day, with the greatest respect, it is still a Racing Point and newly named Aston Martin, as in it's not like he's jumped into a Mercedes. I don't think you can expect him to win race after race, but as in, hopefully, if he's in a team where he's he's happy, that'll lead to an upturn in form.
Well, do you think that Aston Martin have the fourth best car?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
I was going to ask, do you think... Well, I didn't think it was beyond the realms of a possibility that Vettel could be towards the top 5 for chunks of this season, but...
Oh, yeah, I think that's doable.
Yeah, but I don't think you can get into the top 5 with the 5th best car. Because all of a sudden you are meant to be 9th.
Daniel Ricciardo?
Yeah, wow. To be honest, that'd be interesting. If Vettel does actually finish above Ricciardo this season, it would almost be like maybe Christian Horner was right all that time ago. But yeah, there's a lot of unknowns with that. But
Aston Martin a little bit of an unknown for me. It'll be interesting to see how they because let's be fair, Racing Point success last season came from them being quite smart with their car design. Smart is a kind of a loose word there. You can choose whatever word you want to put in there. Can they kind of use that as a base to kind of go and make their own development to make a fast car? Guess we'll have to wait and see.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
To have more cars at the front.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning Lance Stroll. And I'm going to say that I think I've been overly critical of Lance Stroll in the past.
I agree. He proved a lot of people wrong.
Well, you agree that I've been overly critical, or agree that?
Yeah, I agree that you've been more too critical, Jack. It's disgraceful. I do agree that people have been. I mean, to be fair, rightly so. People have been harsh on him because he hasn't earned his seat. He's bought it with his dad's money. It's like, so in a way I haven't got the sympathy that side because he has been given a pretty good hand in terms of chances, but at the same time he's got a pole position which is very hard to do, and he's got 3 podiums. Not every driver
let's put it this way, considering how much people laud Sergio Perez, he only got his first race win last season. So it's not easy to go and get a race win. I think that's you don't end up in a Formula 1 car with a Formula 1 team if you're an absolute mug. So I think it'll be nice. It'll be interesting to see how Aston Martin as a team go. To be honest, because I'm a little bit, and to me Aston Martin are an unknown.
They are, and looking at Lance Stroll from last year, he retired or didn't race in 6 races last year. He either retired or didn't race in. So there's a lot of opportunity to get more points. I mean, from the races he did, he finished in the top 10 every time. So, bar one. So it's like, good.
And who knows? Perhaps he'll learn. Like he had that. I think potentially the biggest loss of points was the Italian Grand Prix, wasn't it? Because on the restart, I think he was on pole.
Yeah,
something like
he was
that.
pole 100%.
And he dropped back about 3 or 4 places, like within the space of 2 corners. So,
really didn't.
Perhaps he'll learn from those experiences and kind of kick on, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully.
We shall see. Right, next team.
Alpine.
Not
Alpine.
Renault. Alpine. Not Alpine.
No, they've been correcting people this week who've said, Alpine. Yeah, I said, nope, it's Alpine.
Alpine.
Formerly known as Renault. Finished 5th last year. Yeah, just straight up. Alpine was Renault. So, just so everyone doesn't know, they're Renault.
Yeah.
To be fair, they were the worst of a good bunch. When it comes to McLaren, what was
yeah, they were
Racing
kind of
Point?
back of that pack, weren't they?
Yeah, what was Renault? They were the third team. And they were an outside shot to get third place at the end of the season, but...
Am I right in saying that Abitbull's gone now?
He is gone. I do not know who's replacing him, but Cyril Abiteboul is gone.
Yeah, so, do you know what? I just remembered we named one of our podcasts with that in it. I should know that.
Yeah, shameful that.
It was Au revoir, Cyril.
Yes.
But
I mean,
bit of
to
a
be
shame.
fair,
I like the people.
they finished fourth, but as we were saying before, Danny Rick finished fifth overall. And it's like, how good is this car actually? Because Esteban Ocon finished all the way down in 12th with just a measly 62. Which is bottom of everybody who was driving any of the good or half-decent cars.
Yeah.
Which is concerning. Do you think they can be a genuine contender? Because, to be fair, they do have a new acquisition in place of Daniel Ricciardo in...
May have heard of him.
Former two-time World Championship winner. 32 race wins to his name. But he hasn't raced in Formula 1 since 2017. It is Fernando Alonso.
Who's that? Fernando Alonso? Never heard of him. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about Alonso coming back. Because, I
think he's lost it.
Well,
I've
I've discussed this with people. I mean, just creating headlines. As in, I was discussing it with someone. I said, but when drivers have come back in the past, it hasn't ended up well. As in, when you look at when Schumacher came back, he wasn't the same as, when he left. I mean, the gap was a lot longer, granted, and the cars were completely different by the time that Schumacher came back, as in the regulations had changed a few times. Equally, when Schumacher had that gap, he didn't race in between, as far as I'm aware. Whereas, Fernando Alonso has done IndyCar, endurance races, all sorts of things. So, he's been kind of keeping himself...
Did he do Le Mans?
I don't think he did Le Mans, no. I think he's done the IndyCar. So, yeah, as in he's been keeping his driving skills topped up, shall we say. Just as a hobby, But...
that reminds me of Kimi Räikkönen. When they're like, why'd you do it? To me, it's a hobby. It's like, I can retire when I want, but it's just a hobby.
Yeah, it's a hobby, yeah. I mean, look, Fernando Alonso will bring, if nothing else, a vast amount of experience to that team and to Ocon. As in, I think Alonso as a mentor is better than Daniel Ricciardo as a mentor, to be honest.
Yeah, Danny Rick's there for a good time and he knows he's really good, but I think Fernando Alonso very much, quite like Sebastian Vettel, is, or maybe not Kimi Räikkönen, I can't see him being much of a mentor to anybody, but...
He just doesn't talk.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can see Fernando maybe helping Ocon a little bit more. Well, what do you make of Ocon, though? Do you think this is potentially his last season?
I mean, I think he's got to step it up, because he was ousted from...
not Racing Point, Force India.
Racing Point for Lance Stroll.
Quite harshly,
was
because
left...
he was on arguably better than Perez that season, but he had no financial backing to basically be all that Racing Point wanted him to be.
Well, this is the thing, is in when it was Ocon is without a seat, everyone was kind of there jaw on the floor. How can this guy be left without a seat? As in, he's way too good to be left without a seat. And to be honest with you, I think this is why Lance Stroll got so much criticism, or still does, is because you were kind of looking at it going, well, hang on, Lance Stroll isn't as talented as Ocon, yet Stroll's got a seat and Ocon doesn't. But Ocon came back last season and he wasn't great.
I mean, he was quite a distance. But then not great. It was only the second half of the season he really did anything.
I mean, it's worth remembering that he had a year and a bit out of the car. Mm-hmm. So, it was always going to take a bit of adjusting to get back into the swing of things. But you'd almost hope that there would have been some sign of getting better, which it didn't seem to be really. As in, Ricciardo outperformed him comprehensively. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about... For me, getting Fernando Alonso back... look, clearly he's very talented, as in, like, he's a 2-time world champion, for goodness
But he's
sake.
not a long-term option, is he?
No, it seems a little bit of a backward step, I think.
I could see that. I could see that. Well, to be honest, though...
Not in terms of quality, but in terms of, as in, like, Daniel Ricciardo and Ocon, you've got a driver who is very talented and very fast in the kind of prime of his career, and you've got Ocon who's very young and he's got, like, a future potential.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you kind of look at it now, and you've got Ocon who, okay, he has a lot of potential, but last season he didn't really show a lot. And you've got Fernando Alonso, who, again, is a 2-time world champion.
You can very much see them having two different drivers there.
But as in, that was nearly 15 years ago that he won his last champ. It was 15 years ago, 2006.
Serious?
2005, 2006 he won his championships.
I had no idea it was that long.
Yeah, he won them both with Renault. So... And, like, there were criticisms of, McLaren, weren't they, when Alonso was there, and they said, Alonso runs the team and all that kind of stuff. Is that going to be the same with Alpine? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see, I think.
To be honest, I think, looking at the testing, it's hard to really get anything, but they did look like they were in a rhythm in terms of... Didn't seem to have anything going wrong with them. They all looked pretty clean in terms of what they were doing. I wouldn't be surprised to see if they are still quite close to that bunch. I don't know if they're going to be ahead of them, but with McLaren having a new engine supplier, there's no guarantees that it is just super compatible. Because they are a customer, and looking at Racing Point, there's no guarantee that they do as well. Sebastian Vettel might not be that great. There's an opportunity for them to exploit in terms of potentially jumping ahead of one or two of them, but it will be a big effort for them.
Yeah, and I think I think there's something quite poignant about the fact that Renault have gone with a name change. I think when I say Renault, as in Alpine is still under the Renault brand, as in it's just a different branch of Renault. Yeah. But I feel like this is kind of like this is a new era now, which I think is why they got rid of Albita Bull, because I don't think he did particularly badly as Renault boss. I just don't think he did particularly well. When you consider that Renault are probably one of the wealthiest teams on the grid, and they're kind of finishing behind 3 or 4 other teams before you even get to Mercedes. It's not really what Renault want, is it? So... Who knows? This could be the start of a new era for...
Well, also, they were finishing behind the McLaren team, which is a customer. If you ever finish behind a customer, you know something's going wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. Do you want to start the next one? Because I feel like you've got a lot vested in this one, to be honest.
To be honest, big fan. The prancing horses, the red car. Enzo Ferrari said, ask a child to draw a car and they'll colour it red. They're the oldest team in Formula 1, the most successful team in Formula 1. 16 Constructor Championships. That's more than a quarter of all Constructor Championships of all time. 237 race victories, 768 podiums, and last year they finished 6th. Ferrari. All of the history, none of the substance at the moment. By and large, because of the engine.
I feel like that's got to be the podcast title. All of the history, none of the substance.
Yeah. They just had nothing last year. They had arguably a better car. Well, arguably they had a better car than Mercedes 2 years ago. But then someone flagged there was something not quite right with that car, or some of the rules changed, and all of a sudden that Ferrari car's a bit of a flop. And they were had nowhere near any of the pace on the straights anymore.
No.
It'd be interesting to see if they've changed anything this year. To be honest, we didn't see much of them in practice, or not by testing, to decipher, because they didn't seem to have anything really go wrong. Once or twice they, I think, retired, but nothing unusual. So it'd be interesting to see if they have a better car. But
I'll be honest with you. I feel like Ferrari could be in for another tough season. In all honesty,
regulation changes next year kind of mean that nobody wants to invest this year. Exactly.
Just purely on the basis of reg changes come in next season. I think Ferrari are going to have to be quite smart in how they do things. Well, for me, what Ferrari needs to do this year is just sort themselves out as a team.
Yeah.
As in, like, what was highlighted last year is that at points, like, their pits crew and everything was bordering on incompetence with some of the decisions they were making. And, they were coming on the radio and going, "Oh, Sebastian, do you want to go with option Z or option Q?" And you've got, like, Vettel's kind of, they're like, "Hang on, why are you asking me? You're the strategist."
Yeah.
Why are you asking me? Like, I'm the one in the car. You need to be telling me, well, not telling me, but as in you need to be advising me which strategy makes sense.
Like in the Turkish Grand Prix, I think it was. No, it wasn't Turkish. It was one of the ones where he had a pretty decent finish by the end of it. But he was there, and I think he was on a set of mediums. He was on a set of mediums, just come off a set of hards after a pretty short stint on the hards. And he was like, "So what's the plan?" But it's basically like, do I need to save these tyres? Because he's on the mediums. It's like, I think there's something like 30 to 40 laps left. And didn't get a response for 2 laps. Said, we're gonna go with option J or something. And it was like, so to the end. It's like, why on earth have we done a short stint on the hards, then gone on for a really long stint on the mediums, and you haven't told me for 2 laps to protect them? It's like, these mediums are remember that. It's like,
because that's the thing. Like, he came over the radio and was like, if you had told me 2 laps ago, I could have saved the tyres for 2 laps. I've been pushing hard now.
Yeah, trying to catch people.
As in, look, it's one thing when your car is a bit of a dog, right? But at the very least, as a team, you've got to perform. And Ferrari last year did neither. Their car was shocking.
They almost finished behind Haas on occasion. I mean,
as in,
for those who don't know,
Haas is the majority of last season, Sebastian Vettel was having a dogfight with Kimi Räikkönen. Like, almost every race, there'd be a shot of Sebastian Vettel either being overtaken by or overtaking Kimi Räikkönen, which is not good enough for Ferrari. So for me, I feel like Ferrari need to see this as a kind of, settle, just be consistent this season. If the car isn't great, so be it. We just need to get ourselves sorted, ready for the regulation changes next year. That's what I think.
To be honest, it's all about that engine. If they can find a different way of using that engine, great. It would be a surprise if they didn't. But at the same time, they haven't got a... So in Formula 1, they've introduced a sort of token system where you can only improve a certain number of parts of your car, and to improve them, you've got to spend one of these tokens, rather than just saying to everybody, go haywire and upgrade whatever you want. It's almost a way to slow people down from just being to buy their way to the top with all of these upgrades or whatever. They said, okay, we've got a token system, and I don't think it costs any tokens to change your engine, but it does cost tokens to change other aspects of the car. So who knows, perhaps they go, well, we can't change anything else, why not just go for it, and try and do some of this engine? Because, I mean, to be fair, if they're competing with Mercedes the year before, and the aerodynamic and chassis elements of the car probably haven't changed that much, they probably still have a model of a car which works. They just need an engine which works. So if they can get that engine sorted, I mean, I'm not saying it's a small step, but you sort the engine, you instantly are going to be towards the top because you've already got a good car. It's like the only reason they were down there was because of that engine. So who knows what happens with them? But hopefully they can.
Who knows? They've also got slight change up of the old driver lineup as well. Carlos Sainz coming in.
Yeah. I'll be honest. As much as it can't go any worse than what happened with Vettel last year, Sainz doesn't look like a Ferrari driver. He just doesn't look. He doesn't have that panache. He just looks too working class in a sense, like of a driver. There's no flair about him in a sense. He just does the job. It's like that dynamic he had with Lando Norris, where it was all fun and games. That pretty much all came from Lando Norris. He's the fun guy.
But do you not think that's what Ferrari could do with a bit of? Is just do your job.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you're driving Ferrari, you've got to have that extra dynamism that you go, that's a Ferrari driver.
But then, is there not... I mean, look, Ferrari have gone for that in the past, and it hasn't worked out particularly well, has it? And Ferrari's option, really, apart from Carlos Sainz, probably was Daniel Ricciardo. And I think if you get... Well, as in, if you think about it realistically, as in, who else would they have got off the grid?
Giovinazzi?
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't say I don't want Carlos Sainz and then say you'll have Giovinazzi instead.
Giovinazzi is the only Italian driver on the grid, and they're an Italian team. But also, phenomenal. He's a phenomenal start driver. You know, he always was getting like 4 or 5 positions at the start of every race. It was incredible. And he'd always crash out. It was always his fault. But if they can sort that out, he could be a phenomenal driver, Jack.
I can't believe that you're saying... Oh, Carlos Sainz is just not a Ferrari driver. But Giovinazzi, on the other hand...
I'm looking long term. If you're not going to win it
but this is the thing.
Why are you going for Sainz? Go for Giovinazzi.
What you got to remember is that Ferrari have already got Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
As in, they've got their golden boy. So they don't want to be... I don't think it makes much sense to get somebody who is as young as, if not younger than... Well, this is the thing as well. Like, you'd be surprised. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc aren't actually that separate in age.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz looks like a 40-year-old man.
Well,
but he's not.
he's been in Formula 1 for ages.
Yeah.
So, a bit of experience, bit of solidity. I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest.
Hey, me and Charles Leclerc are separated in birth by 12 days. Maybe I should partner.
How old is he? Sorry, not how old is he, but when's he born?
16th of October 1997. October 97.
Is he?
Represent.
That's depressing, isn't it?
I know. I always feel that when I see the likes of Jadon Sancho playing football. I'm like, gosh, I got 3 years on you. It's like, what happened, eh?
What went wrong, eh? What went wrong? I'm sure I saw something on the news the other day about a lost generation of talent. I feel like I'm part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Ignored. That's what it was. I could have made it if I was given the chance.
Overlooked. There we are. Right, should we move on to the kind... I mean, you've put midfield.
Yeah.
I feel like
one car, one team.
You've put one team in the midfield.
Well, because this
and
team...
that's AlphaTauri.
Yeah, this team doesn't deserve to be one of those making up the numbers teams where they don't really contribute. But at the same time, I don't think it's within the realms of them to finish in the top 6. I just don't think they can do it. I think it's a gulf. Not a massive one, but it's a gulf that's big enough that they're not going to...
Gasly has as many wins in Formula 1 as Sergio Perez does.
He does, but that was a freak result. In terms
How
of...
dare you! Take that back!
There was a red flag and he was just happened to be at the front of that, or second, or something like that. Yeah, second, when the red flag came. So it was like, great, gets a fresh set of tyres, and gets to go from the second place. It's like, he didn't earn second place in that situation. He was a very fortunate benefactor of it.
Yeah, well, whatever.
To be honest, after seeing that and how many red flags we had last year, it wouldn't surprise me if teams like Haas just go, hey, run these cars into the ground and hope we get a red flag and then we'll be at the front. It's like that's all I can imagine them doing to have a chance of getting points next year. But
yeah, I think AlphaTauri's driver lineup is actually really exciting.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
I mean, I really like Pierre Gasly, and I think Tsunoda is he was looking very fast in testing. Yeah,
I mean, he's quite short, and he does make the fun of himself quite often. But so I'm amazed he can see on occasion over the top. It's like, but
just go with ignorance is bliss. Is there a car there? No idea. Let's just go with it anyway.
What? I know there's a turn coming. Let's just turn. But yeah, I don't know too much about Tsunoda. I imagine he was pretty good in F2. Otherwise, he
was very good in F2.
But I mean, I genuinely think when Bottas leaves McLaren, that Pierre Gasly might be on their mind. I think he's that good.
I think if it weren't for George Russell being managed by Toto Wolff, I would agree with you.
But the thing is, I'm not sure if Toto is that convinced. He's very good, George Russell, but I don't know. I think anybody could be good in that McLaren, and I'd love to see them take a massive swing and just show Red Bull what they missed out on. Because Pierre, as much as he wants that seat in the Red Bull,
excuse me,
I don't think there's a huge amount of love between them. I mean, Alpine's another option for him, but I do think Pierre Gasly is going to be the steal for whatever team goes for him.
Yeah.
I mean, outside...
Whatever team bites next, yeah.
I mean, looking at all the other teams, McLaren maybe with... Not McLaren. Mercedes with Bottas and Red Bull looking at Perez. I don't think McLaren would swap either of their drivers for him, and I don't think Aston Martin would, but Alpine probably would. Ferrari probably would for Carlos Sainz.
French team, French driver. Is that not the dream?
That's the marriage made in heaven for a sort of storyline.
Well, you forget when Mercedes were formed, their premise was German team, German driver, which is why they ended up with Mr. Schumacher and Mr. Rosberg.
But interestingly, Toto did say that he was looking at Nico Hülkenberg and opted against it for Hamilton when he was choosing
that was smart.
That was smart. But you know what I mean? So there's a chance they don't go for they've tried, Alpine have tried the French model of Esteban Ocon and it's not worked. So who knows? Who knows? But yeah. I'd love to see.
The thing that's worth bearing in mind as well is like we say about George Russell. By the time that George Russell is potentially ready for Mercedes, who knows if Toto Wolff is still even there?
Yeah, to be honest, he did this off-season sign a 3-year extension, so you'd assume he should.
Didn't I'm sure they read he said something about it could be in a different role.
No, so I'm pretty sure this one was to be the team manager. Oh, well, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do refer to it in the Drive to Survive about his contract, and he was saying he wants to be hands-on at least for the short term, and he did mention going into a more overlooking role at some point. But I'm pretty sure those 3 years were to be the team's principal, so you should be there for the more immediate future.
Let's hope so.
But I'd just like to see Pierre Gasly in a different car because I think he genuinely could contend. You see his overtake of, I think it was Sergio Perez at Upper Rouge in Spa. It was just like, when they talk about going for the gap, you always see the quote, I can never remember who says it.
Ayrton Senna.
Yeah, it's like, you always got to go for the gap or whatever. But it's like, Pierre Gasly just...
If you don't go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver.
Exactly. And Maldonado, if there isn't a gap, go for it anyway. But Pierre Gasly...
Oh, Crash Door. I've missed you all, Crash Door.
But Pierre, that was an opportunity where there was a gap. And it was, he just went, I'm going for it. I don't care. I'm just going to go for it. And it was a sensational overtake at Rouge. But
it was immense.
Yeah, I just think he deserves to be in a better car. I'm not saying the AlphaTauri's that bad because I think it's a good developmental team.
No, but it's at the end of the day, it's a feeder team for Red Bull, isn't it?
Described as a sister team, but yeah, 100% a feeder.
It's a feeder team. They can call it a sister team all they want. It's a feeder team.
It's the only team where the drivers don't want to drive for it. In a sense, they're always looking on. You see, all the other drivers and other teams are like, "Oh, I'm glad I've got a seat." But anybody who's driving for AlphaTauri is only looking at the Red Bull seat.
For Red Bull,
I want that seat.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens? Because I'll be honest, I do think it's more likely that Pierre drives for a team that isn't Red Bull next. I just think it's never going to happen. Christian Horner's too stubborn. I think at some point Pierre will get fed up, and I think there's too many other teams which potentially could go for him, for him to deny.
Yeah.
Going on from them though, should we go on to the teams that are sort of just making up the numbers?
Yeah.
The most exciting of the three, I'd probably say, is Williams.
Is it?
I'd say so. Not in terms of what I expect them to get the points wise, but the only team that I don't think's given up. Maybe Alfa Romeo as well.
Don't forget that Haas have got Mick Schumacher this year.
Yeah, but they said they're using the same car as last year. They're saving their tokens, which for upgrades for next year, so that in the new
it's not promising,
is it? 4, and it's 2 rookies. It's like, when has that ever worked? I haven't heard of it in history. I don't know too much about it, but who goes and says,
I feel like next year could be make or break for Haas, I'll be honest. I feel like if they have another bad year next year, it's kind of like, what are you doing here?
Well, at the same time, though, Lawrence Stroll is like a lifeline for any team that he goes to. And if Nikita Mazepin's father is kind of the same thing, who knows, he could be the massive benefactor they need just to, so that Gene Haas doesn't have to keep pouring money in. But anyway, sticking on Williams, they got George Russell and Latifi. Latifi's another person paying for his seat. But George Williams, he's Mr. Saturday.
George Williams?
Mix that up. I saw Williams and just went, George Williams. George Russell.
William George?
Yeah. George Russell is probably one of the top drivers on the grid, but
Yeah.
he's just
I
happy
feel like
sitting
George,
there.
of that kind of bunch of drivers, like, and it's funny because, like, yeah, sorry, out of that bunch of drivers, you've got Leclerc, I was about to say Albon, that's a bit awkward, Gasly, George Russell, and who am I missing? Lando Norris. I think the two best ones out of them are Leclerc and George Russell.
Yeah, 100%. I think if Leclerc is ever in a top 3 car, he's going to be pretty much on the same level as Hamilton. I think in that year where it was Ferrari and Mercedes going at it 2 years ago, I don't think Bottas or Vettel were even in the equation. It was always Leclerc and Hamilton. But yeah, carrying on with Williams.
Is there anything else to say, really?
No, they are. What I mean by not giving up is that I don't think at any point people thought Williams had given up. They'd always be trying desperately to try and find a way to catch up to everybody else. But when I look at Haas and I see how they just, always talk about tanking in the NFL, but these guys are tanking in F1 just to make sure that they can keep some tokens
compete
for next year. Yeah, so it's very. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes, because I wouldn't mind betting that if
it could pay
if
off.
Haas were, say again, sorry.
It could pay off if
but I wouldn't mind betting.
And they go loads of tokens on performance upgrades that everybody else can't afford to do because they haven't got tokens anymore. They could be one of the top cars. But yeah, carry on.
I would be if Haas were to have a good season next year, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a regulation change, because I don't think Formula One would want teams hoarding tokens to have like a bolt of the blue year, like randomly win a championship and then be like, right, we need to build up another 5 years tokens now. Because they want a little bit of consistency to kind of keep competitions and rivalries going.
To be honest though, I think any team that does that, I don't think it'll work like the NFL where, it's going to be like a one season thing. I think if they just spend it all at once to do those upgrades, I think they probably would be able to stick around for a while. So,
I guess because they have the basis then, don't they? They have the kind of starting point.
Your
to
stuff
work
doesn't
off.
go out of date very quickly in the F1. You have to constantly upgrade, but once you're at the top,
once there's a regulation change, it's fairly similar, isn't it?
You got 10 years at least being decent. And then Alfa Romeo, there's nothing really to say about them, but they have Kimi Räikkönen. That's it. That's the big differentiator between them, Haas and Williams, is that they've got Kimi Räikkönen, and
he's got the Iceman.
He showed how good he was last year. He was just insane from the back. I mean, I was looking at his results. He beat Latifi, Magnussen, Grosjean, Russell, and Giovinazzi in one. Well, he beat all of them in the second. Well, no. Going through the races, he pretty much beat them all in every single race. He was just always just ploughing his way through the field, making sure he was at the front of that bunch. Because there is only so much he can do, but cool, calm, collected, only retired once, and that was the first race of the season. That's just the model of efficiency. And he's the only one who... Oh no, he got 2, 3, 4... He got 4 points last year, which is the most out of everybody out of those 3 teams. So yeah. They've got the Iceman, and that's the one difference between Alfa Romeo and everybody else.
Fair enough.
It would have been cool if he'd been paired with Schumacher though, instead of Giovinazzi. I just think it could have been Schumacher and Raikkonen driving for Alfa. He could have been his sort of mentor in a way, but yeah.
Right, so I guess that's a summary of all of the teams, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I guess there are multiple reasons to be watching F1 this season then.
Absolutely.
No changes to money, right?
Yeah, it's not about the money anymore. You can't just
It's not about the money.
buy your way to the top like Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes do. They've put a cap, so it's £114.2 million a year.
Gosh, how can they survive on that?
And that doesn't include driver salaries or senior executives at the teams. So it's only
doesn't include driver salaries. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it doesn't include driver salaries. So it's all for the team and the car. Which would be interesting to see if teams, like you get these guys who retire a lot. That's going to cost him a lot of money to keep building a new car. So I'm surprised if someone would go, who doesn't crash? Kimi Räikkönen doesn't crash. And they go, well, he's worth spending more money on just because he means that we haven't got to spend as much money. Which would be interesting. But also what I didn't realise is there's a sort of sliding scale as to how much time you're allowed to spend in the aero tunnels.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
So if you're the best team, you get the least time. And if you're the worst team, you get the most time. Williams.
Yeah. I like that little kind of... Yeah. Williams.
It'd be interesting to see if that does make any difference, because I think what F1 is trying to do is bring all the teams closer together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? Hopefully they will. But maybe Ferrari are playing the long game. Maybe purposely they are tanking, so they get all this time in the aero tunnels before the new regulations, and then they're like, right, here we go. We got it all sorted. But I doubt it.
Yeah.
They're probably just not very good.
Time will tell. Well, that's the podcast, I think, isn't it?
That is our preview and review of Formula One.
That is our pre-season podcast.
And the first race of the season, probably should talk about that a little bit, is Bahrain this weekend, which is interesting because I think not the final, not the penultimate, but the one before that race of last season was also Bahrain. And in that one, Hamilton won.
He did.
And Max Verstappen came second. Alex Albon came third. So perhaps a good race for the Red Bulls. But
Who
also,
knows?
It was Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz who came in fourth and fifth. So this, if that car is better with the Mercedes engine and Danny Rick instead of Carlos Sainz, we could be seeing 2 McLarens on the podium. That would be an interesting world.
Who are you predicting for a win?
Oh, let's do this every week for the season. We could almost get a point-scoring basis going.
I feel like this... Yes, that's a good idea. This is like a shot in the dark now, because all we have to base off is pre-season, which doesn't tell us basically nothing. Right. So, who's going to win the first race?
Let's do this as this. We'll say, who do you think is going to get pole position? Who's going to win the race? And who's going to get the most positions gained throughout the race?
Wow, okay, right. So, who is going to qualify first?
To qualify first, I think, is going to be Verstappen.
Who's going to win the race?
Verstappen.
Who's going to get the most overtakes?
Come back to me on that one. You do yours just for a moment whilst I think about that.
I'm going to say qualifying first is going to be Valtteri Bottas. I'm going to say win the race, Danny Rick. And most overtakes is going to be...
You've got to be bad at qualifying to be good at overtaking, and that is where it's going to be tricky.
I'm going to say Yuki Tsunoda.
Really? You think he's going to be the standout guy in race 1? In terms of...
We'll see. Why not?
I think the person who's going to get the most overtakes. Now, bearing in mind, last year, the first race of the season, I think it was the first race of the season, Latifi ended up finishing either 10th or 11th, purely on the basis of so many retirements. So maybe it's worth picking somebody who's guaranteed going to have a car that isn't going to retire.
I feel like you're overthinking this, Jack.
Very much so. I'm a massive overthinker.
Who's going to have the most overtakes?
Look, who's in the Aston Martin lineup? Vettel, Stroll. No, it's not going to be either of them. I'm going to go most overtakes, Lando Norris. One last lap bonanza.
Fair enough. There we are. Those are our predictions. Why not come back next week to find out if we were correct?
Yeah.
We'll be talking about the race next week as well, I think. Because the F1 season is in full swing.
It is.
Thank you for joining us again on the Down to the Wire podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, why not give us a like and a subscribe? If you're listening on Spotify, why not give us a follow? We're also on Anchor, Pocket Casts, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts.
Aced it.
Done. Aced it. There we are. It's almost like I've done this 19 times in a row.
This is the 20th.
It is. You're right. The 20th time in a row.
Happy 20.
Happy 20. There we are. Pleasure as always, Jack. And we'll be back next week.